The Adam is Vauxhall's refreshingly different take on the small car sector. It doesn't replace the brand's conventional citycar and supermini offerings, but it does offer a more stylish option that sits somewhere in between for buyers bored with the sight of BMW's reinventing Mini on every drive and unmoved by Fiat's funky 500. Here's a fashionable alternative with an encyclopaedic list of options, bidding for individuality beyond the hatchback herd. Once upon a time, a small car was a purely functional thing. It certainly wasn't something you bought to make any kind of fashion statement. Those seeking to do that on an affordable budget usually went for a little sports car, or perhaps in more recent years a compact SUV. No longer. Since the turn of the century and the success of BMW's Mini, we've all learnt how small cars can have a big street-side impact upon people often not too fussy about how much they have to pay to achieve it. Now, people like that want a more unique product, of course, hence a developing trend amongst mainstream makers in creating separate small car model lines with which to serve them. So it is that Fiat offers its trendy 500 alongside its workaday Panda, and that Citroën offers the avant-garde DS3 as well as its ordinary C3. And Vauxhall? Well, as an alternative to the bread-and-butter Corsa Supermini they offer, what about a small car created for nothing less than uniqueness? This one, the Adam. The model title's a nod to Adam Opel, founder of Vauxhall's European sister company, but is unlikely to start a trend for biblical car names. It may, though, start a trend for buyer personalisation, the like of which the market has never before seen. With over 1 million possible trim and specification combinations, the chances of two identical Adams ever being produced are statistically quite slim. Groundbreaking where it matters then, in the showroom. Perhaps to disguise the fact that underneath, in arguably less important areas, this Vauxhall is really quite conventional, riding on the chassis and underpinnings of an old third-generation Vauxhall Corsa. The dealer network won't mind. It's the stylish look and feel that will sell this model. True enough, the Griffin brand has brought us some stylish designs in the past, but they've only appealed to a small percentage of the car-buying population. Now at last, we've a Vauxhall with widespread chic appeal, a pretty new concept for British customers to grasp. Let's try it. So, what's it like behind the wheel? Slide into the seat and there's a very different feel from that of a Corsa or that of any other conventional supermini, come to that. The commanding driving position, the big chunky Mini-like wheel, the wide low glass area. It all makes you eager to tackle the urban jungle with the promise of secondary road sportiness beyond. Not too much mind, there's no really rorty engine in the lineup and the underpinnings are resolutely Corsa-based, not a Supermini many would equate with an especially rewarding drive. In actual fact, more recent Corsas have been more fun to chuck about than many in the motoring press would have you believe. And this Adam can actually be quite fun on your favourite B-road, if not quite Fiesta frisky. Improvements in this respect have been made with the adoption of UK market-specific ride and handling tweaks, added after an initially unfavourable British press reaction on this car's international launch. Now these have made an important difference, enough I think to make unnecessary the adoption of the extra cost sport suspension, which, like the oversized 18-inch alloy wheels that lie on the options list, will make the whole ride feel rather over firm in this car's preferred urban environment. Better to simply accept this car for the friendly fashion trinket it is, with the proviso that the entry-level 70 PS 1.2 litre 16-valve unit really struggles a little with the task of pushing 1.1 tonnes of Adam up the road with any real zip. As with all the power plants launched with this car, it's a petrol engine, and it takes, nearly 15 seconds to go from rest to 62 miles an hour on the way to a top speed of only just 100 miles an hour. Better by far to find only a little more for one of the 1.4s. There's an 87 PS unit that makes 62 from rest in a far more acceptable 12.5 seconds on the way to a top speed of 109 miles an hour, or a 100 PS 1.4 that improves those figures to 11.5 seconds and 115 miles an hour. Ask for something a little more high-tech and the designers will point you towards the 1-litre 3-cylinder unit also developed for this car. Now, as with most models of this kind, while you'll be quite comfortable in attempting a motorway trip of a couple of hours, you will notice up and around the legal limit that refinement isn't quite as good as you first thought. This is partly down to the provision of a 5-speed gearbox in most mainstream variants, which are really much more comfortable in an urban environment, somewhere where you can press this little city button on the dashboard to make wheel twirling that much easier and get yourself into the tightest parking space. Exactly the kind of thing you'd want from a car like this. So, what do you think? Not as instantly eye-catching perhaps as a rival Mini or Fiat 500, but then these brands have the advantage of aesthetically harking back to 50s retro models, the themes for which evoke instant recognition. Not having a diminutive automotive golden oldie to reprise, Vauxhall were left in the same position as Citroën has with its DS3, Alfa has with its Mito, or Audi has with its A1. Namely, the need to create a fresh, new, modern, small motoring lifestyle theme. Most of these cars look a little dull until you start to dress them with appropriate options, and it's the same story here. But once you have, then it's hard not to like this cute and cuddly shape, even if it is based on rather old underpinnings, those of a third-generation Vauxhall Corsa supermini dating all the way back to 2006. Of course, cynics say that fashion-led small runabouts are merely smart-suited city cars wearing supermini price tags. There's some truth in that, truth indeed which appears at first glance to apply in this case. At under 3.7 metres in length, this Adam indeed is actually smaller than many city cars, and it's a full 300 millimetres shorter than a Vauxhall Corsa supermini. But there's more to it than that. The tall height and the considerable width, it's actually wider than a Corsa, positions it visually as a bigger car than it actually is. A clever aesthetic trick, which, as we shall see, pays dividends inside. As in a Fiat 500, the high roof gives a spacious feel, something that's further underlined here by the greater width and glass area. But all the smoke and mirrors in the world can't create space where there isn't much. And Vauxhall's claim that this design can comfortably seat up to 4 people requires for its fulfillment the directive that those in the front should be very short-legged indeed. Now, to be fair, most Adam owners won't want to be regularly transporting people in the rear anyway, and for those occasions when they do, when friends need a lift perhaps, they'll feel less claustrophobic in the back of this Vauxhall than in just about any other small lifestyle runabout I can think of. It's certainly much nicer here than it would be in the back of a Mini, a rear position in which even my kids object to. And at the wheel, well, as a buyer, you'll have used the enormous trim choice range to create a decor finish that's either restrained, willfully extrovert, or more likely, as in this case, a feel that's somewhere between the two. Aside from that, curiously, it does really feel quite Mini-like, a feeling engendered by the provision of the same kind of oversized, chunky steering wheel that rather adds to the feeling of impending fun. In front of you, there is, fortunately, no huge retro Mini-like central dial, but the red-needled instrument pack with its watch-like dials is smarter and easier to get to grips with than that, though it is a pity that you don't get specific 30 and 70 mile an hour markings on the speedo. The clean overall design is complemented by a centre console, proving that GM's designers really can do this kind of thing in a smart, concise, easy to use form. Instead of the rows of complicated little switches and knobs that you get on a Corsa, an Astra or an Insignia, you get a simple, clear, easy to grasp layout that most buyers will want to dominate with the optional 7-inch LCD colour IntelliLink infotainment system that is the first of its kind to be able to communicate with both Apple and Android devices and applications, and can be operated either via the touchscreen or by switches on the steering wheel. As you'd expect, it deals with stereo and smartphone duties, but it can go a lot further than that. Thanks to USB and Bluetooth connectivity, it can, in the gallery section, play your own personal videos or show your own personal pictures, while the phone app section can link you in with approved apps like Stitcher, the global podcast internet radio system, or Bringo, a navigation app that in future is likely to make many extra cost sat-nav systems virtually redundant. Out back, a prod on the rear Griffin badge reveals a 170-litre boot that lies size-wise somewhere between the slightly smaller space you'd get in a Mini and the slightly larger one you'd have in a Fiat 500. Now, as with those cars, pushing forward the split-folding rear bench doesn't free up a whole lot more room. In this case, the 484 litres that you get is actually one of the smallest spaces available in the class in this form, and less than half what you get with a Vauxhall Corsa's rear seats folded in the same way. But then you don't buy a car of this kind for huge carriage capacity. Of more interest to likely Adam buyers will be the clever touches, like the Flex Fit bike attachment system that you can specify on the rear bumper. It can carry up to a couple of bikes. Not something you'd expect to be able to do in a car this small. The Adam value proposition is based on a pretty simple trade of size against style. Just as with a Mini or a Fiat 500, the idea is that you should get a city car sized runabout, think tiny Ford Ka or Volkswagen Up, for the price of a conventional supermini, think Corsa or Fiesta, with compensation provided by a supersized helping of style and desirability. And sure enough, a glance at the price lists reveals that you'll be paying pretty much the same for this Adam as you will for a comparably powerful, conventional lower-order petrol-powered three-door Corsa or Fiesta. That sounds like a deal that would interest many, but potential purchasers need to bear in mind that, like many other models of this kind, this Adam restricts you to a three-door body style, and in comparison to a conventional supermini, severely limits you in your choice of engines. If that's okay with you, from there on in, the news is mostly all good, with prices sitting in an £11,500 to £15,000 bracket common to cars of this kind. The way things were at launch, unless you really did prioritise boot space, then you'd certainly be well tempted to choose an Adam over a Corsa, not only because this design looks so much more appealing. Let me explain by running through the petrol options. The entry-level Adam 1.2, fitted with the EcoFlex start-stop package that most will want, will save you a few hundred over the comparable Corsa, the 1-litre Corsa EcoFlex. Go up to the next Adam in the range, the 1.4 87 PS, and that will also save you over a comparably powerful Corsa 1.2, which again doesn't have the EcoFlex tweaks you can specify on this Adam, so will cost you significantly more to run. The only engine that both Corsa and Adam directly share is the 100 PS 1.4 litre petrol unit that I've been trying here, and that will save you around £1,000 or so if you specify it in this Adam, even if you have the EcoFlex tweaks as part of the Adam package. EcoFlex tweaks you can't get on the comparable Corsa fitted with the same engine. All well and good, but perhaps, fortunately for Vauxhall, most potential Adam buyers won't be considering a run-of-the-mill Corsa Supermini as an alternative. any more than they'd be looking at a bread and butter small car choice like a Ford Fiesta, which incidentally in equivalently powered 3-door petrol form will also cost you more than this car. No, potential buyers will be looking at more lifestyle orientated small car choices, and probably at two in particular, both retro in flavour, the Mini and the Fiat 500. Against the Mini, this Vauxhall looks good. It's a few £100 less to buy, model for model, and the boot is very slightly bigger, unless you fold down the seats. And because this Vauxhall has a range of smaller capacity engines, it's also slightly more efficient. It'll go probably 3 to 4 more miles on every gallon than the equivalent Mini and put out around 10% less CO2. Perhaps a tougher rival is Fiat's cute little 500. A 500 1.2 model looks a lot cheaper than a comparable Adam 1.2. But once you start adding to the Fiat the extra cost ESP, stability control, air conditioning and alloy wheels that most owners will want, then they cost about the same. Further up the 500 range, the frugality of the two-cylinder twin-air petrol engine the Fiat offer looks appealing against a similarly priced and comparably powerful 100 PS Adam 1.4. But you've got that issue of the stability control, the alloy wheels and the aircon again. You've got to pay extra for those on the Fiat, and that, many will feel, sways the Advantage Vauxhall's way. There are other lifestyle-orientated small runabouts you could consider that aren't too far off the budget required for an Adam, but one way or another they'll end up costing you a little more in the wallet region. Take Alfa Romeo's little Mito in 1.4 78 brake horsepower form, which would cost you a few £100 more, but comes with an 8-valve engine that's older and thirstier. More efficient is the entry-level version of Audi's A1 in 1.2 TFSI form, but that would cost you nearly £14,000. A better choice, I think, is the base version of Citroen's DS3, the VTI 82, which has a 3-cylinder 82 brake horsepower engine that's more efficient than a comparably powerful mid-range 1.4 litre Adam, but is slower, noisier and nearly £1,000 more expensive. If, having considered all of this, you conclude that it is an Adam that you really want, then once you've decided between standard and sport suspension, I'd go the standard route, it's much more compliant, then your first choice will be between engines. Now, it's a bit annoying to find that whatever your choice of power plant, you've to budget another £300 on top of the cost of it to get the EcoFlex start-stop package that most rivals include as standard. Still, it'll just about pay for itself probably in tax and fuel savings, so it's probably best to take that as a given and start your calculations from there. Now, the entry-level 70 PS 1.2 litre petrol Adam unit is a little feeble in terms of having to shift this car's bulk, and I'd suggest that you consider paying a little bit more for one of the 1.4 litre petrol options. Using that 1.2 petrol's price as a starting point, you'll need to find £350 more to get yourself into the 87 PS Adam 1.4 and £850 more to get yourself into the 100 PS Adam 1.4 that I've got here. Is it equally important to go large in terms of trim level? When it comes to that, I'm not quite so sure. There are three main ones. From baseline jam level, which is what Vauxhall terms as fashionable, you can pay another £1,500 more to go glam. That's the mid-trim level. Vauxhall describes it as being a bit more elegant. And on top of that, you can pay another £500 if you want to get the supposedly sportier top spec level that I have here. That's slam. Given that this car is all about individual bespoke tailoring, though, I can't help but feel that it might be better to buy in at the baseline jam level and then just add in the individual options you really want. But regardless of the approach you decide to take in this respect, all Adam models come pretty well equipped, with a kit list running to alloy wheels, air conditioning, a decent quality CD stereo with a DAB digital radio and USB and aux-in compatibility, Bluetooth compatibility for your mobile phone, a trip computer, a leather-wrapped steering wheel, cruise control and hill start assist to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions. Now, much of this will cost you extra with rivals at entry level. But that's just the start. No other vehicle, arguably, in the history of automotive manufacturing has offered the kind of scope that this one does for buyer personalisation. And it's at this point that you become, if you like, chief designer of your own particular car. Let me show you how the process works. You start outside with the bodywork and the roof that can be painted the same way or in contrasting colours, as here, all bearing flamboyant names like Papa Don't Peach, White My Fire, James Blonde, Men in Brown, or my personal favourite, I'll Be Black. If you want, you can further jazz up your chosen colour with a range of special decal packs. Splat, if you've gone for the jam. Fly, if you've gone for the glam. Or stripes, in the case of this slam. Many of these decals are also included in a bold selection of options packs designed to take your fashion statement to the next level, with the main choice being between a simple two-tone black or white approach or the more out there, extreme or twisted packages. That only leaves wheels with a wide choice between 16 to 18-inch rims, some of which can be ordered with interchangeable colour clips, which can simply be clicked on or off as the fashion or the season takes you. And that whole idea of interchangeable fashion is carried on inside. As with the wheel clips, these fascia decor and door surround panels come in a huge range of bold colours. Some are even backlit by glowing LEDs and can be clipped on or off to suit your tastes or those of subsequent owners. So you can afford to actually go a little bit wild in the way that you specify this car and this cabin, safe in the knowledge that it might not necessarily leave your car as being completely unsaleable when it comes to resale time. You can simply spec it back to ordinariness. Decisions you'll be stuck with may take a little extra thought. Whether to choose the interior leather pack that colour coordinates both steering wheel and gear knob, whether to select the ambient lighting package that bathes the door pockets, the centre console and the passenger footwell with one of 7 different colours, or a constantly changing kaleidoscope of all of them. Then there's the printed headliners, the most sophisticated of which I really don't think I'd be able to resist. Called Starlight, it embeds 64 LED lights into the roof lining, creating the feeling of a starry sky, something I've only ever seen before on a Rolls-Royce Phantom limousine. Brilliant. The one thing that isn't optional on this Adam, and shouldn't be, is safety. Twin front side and curtain airbags and ABS brakes are standard, along with the ESP stability control system that many rivals charge extra for at entry level. Some of the fancier systems borrowed from larger cars that other competitors have started to offer are missing from the options list, but you can specify tyre pressure monitoring. I'd also want to guard against multi-storey car park dents by considering rear parking sensors and a clever auto park assist system that can help you identify and then automatically steer you into the tightest spaces. No small car can get by these days without an exemplary set of running cost returns, and this one's no different. You have to say that the decision to go without diesel power from launch was a curious one, bearing in mind that all this model's rivals offer it. Still, Vauxhall clearly wanted to leave room for the eco-minded 1-litre 3-cylinder unit that you can ask your dealer about. Mainstream buyers, though, will be totting up the likely fuel and CO2 returns from the 1.2 or 1.4 litre petrol engines that this car was launched with. Figures that would have looked a lot better if the EcoFlex pack that you're required to pay £300 extra for was included as standard. As well as low rolling resistance tyres, this includes a start-stop system that cuts the engine when you don't need it, stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights. It's all enough to make a difference of about 5% to your fuel and CO2 figures. Returns that you can hopefully replicate on a day-to-day basis thanks to an eco drive assistant. It's basically a section of the trip computer that monitors your energy consumption and indicates when you should change up. It's a package I'd certainly want to bargain my way into when buying this car. Doing so will see you achieve a combined consumption fuel reading of around 56 miles to the gallon and a CO2 return of about 119 grams per kilometre, whichever of the mainstream models you select. If you want me to put that into perspective, it's a bit better than a Mark II Mini, but not quite as good as a Fiat 500. The residual values will lag behind these two as well, particularly those of the Mini, but only until the market adjusts to the idea of a fashion-led, trendy, desirable little Vauxhall. Then there's the bold 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty to consider. It's standard with this Adam, but only for the first owner. So, the name's unusual, and so for Vauxhall is the approach. This most blue-collar of all mass-market makers is now offering us a potentially more bespoke product than lottery winners can buy from Rolls-Royce or Aston Martin. It's all rather intriguing. The tiny lifestyle city statement this car represents is a well-familiar one, of course. But no rival Mini or Fiat 500 has yet offered scope for personalisation quite on this scale. These cars, some will argue, are trendier looking to start with and need less dressing up. But by the same token, many others are starting to find their retro vibe rather tiresome and overly familiar. These people may be quite happy to sign up to a newer, fresher look, even if to get it they must trade the higher tech and sportier handling that some other rivals will offer. And as with other lifestyle cars of this kind, they must also forgo the greater space they'd have enjoyed in an ordinary run-of-the-mill supermini that would have cost much the same. The growth of this particular little market niche suggests that there are many buyers out there making those sorts of choices. And in meeting their needs, this is very much the more interesting, fashion-led kind of product the Vauxhall simply has to make for long-term profitability. If it strikes a chord with you, well, why not? It may well be time to say hello to Adam.